for us.
Hello, everybody.
If you have any questions and you are present in Monterey Park, please make sure you have a microphone so that Lancaster and San Diego can hear the question. We have 2 up in the front, and I believe we have 1 in the back as well. And if you're missing your handouts, we'll have them for you in a minute.
Okay, hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. This is a big group of people. So I am Stacey Lisk. I'm the Executive Director of Southern California Family Mediation. We are a nonprofit. We are an independent organization that provides mediation services in connection with the LA Superior Court juvenile proceedings. And I'm going to get into this really quickly because I want to make sure that you guys all get the information that you came here for today. I've had a lot of mediation training, and the training and the information that has helped me the most is my training in motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a therapy technique that it started as a therapy technique for drug counselors. And it happens to be helpful in professions like ours. Any professions, healthcare practitioners use this because it is a way to help clients make decisions and lifestyle changes. And often, and it's a short, can happen very quickly, and that's why it's great in mediation. In our mediations here at the courthouse, we only have 5 hours to do a mediation, and we have to get a parent to go from 2 days a month for dad to 15 days a month, right? And so things have to happen in a short amount of time. So it's helpful for mediators, and I think it'll be helpful for you because you're asking your clients to make important decisions about their families, and they're often having to make those decisions in a short period of time. So motivational interviewing is defined by Stephen Miller and William Miller and Stephen Rolnick as a collaborative conversation style for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change. And it's based on the premise that as people hear themselves talk, they learn what they believe. And through a conversation, as we're having conversations with clients, we are helping them to visualize, verbalize, and imagine change. And so through this conversation, we're helping clients find their pro-change voice. And it is pretty amazing how simple this can be. As I said, we have 5 hours to do a mediation, and we start with a parent who's refusing to give any time to the other parent, and in 5 hours we're getting them to help them come to some kind of an agreement. So there's a few tools that I know are going to be very specific that you guys can all use, and that will be helpful in any part of your life for communication. And then there's a few other tools and techniques that I'm going to show you that we do in mediation, and maybe you guys can help me figure out how it might help you in what you're doing. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and the assumption here is that everybody has the wisdom about themselves and good reasons for doing what they're doing, and every person has the capacity to change. So active listening, reflecting, and summarizing is one of the techniques that we use in this method. Has anyone heard of active listening or reflecting? Okay, so who could tell me what maybe active listening is? Yes?
Listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond.
Yes, listening to understand, definitely. Anybody else? So we call it high quality listening. But the thing is, in mediation, and for you probably, listening isn't enough. When a person is pouring their heart out to you and they're having extreme emotions and they're really concerned about their family and what is happening, nodding your head, smiling, and telling them that I understand what you're going through may not be enough to help them through that situation, especially if they have to come from that situation to making a decision after that. So that's where reflection comes in. Has anybody heard of the term reflection? Okay, so reflection is a couple of different things. And through a reflection, You can help, what you're doing is you're helping a person know that you understand where they're coming from. A reflection shows a person that you understand the dilemma that they are in. And when you can show a person that, you are garnering their trust. And as you're garnering their trust, you are then able to be put in a position where you can help a person figure it out. You can, whatever decision they have to make, you are now putting yourself in a position where you're helping them figure it out. You're not their teacher, you're not their the expert in all, you are helping them. So this is how people can help, you can help people come to make decisions. So in mediation, we know that when people are having strong emotions, they're not going to be able to make a decision, and they're not going to be able to hear you. I'm sure you've all had the experience in court with the client that the judge or you is talking to that client, and you leave the room and the client has no idea that what just happened in that courtroom or what the judge just told them. And the reason why is because their brain's going and they're on, crazy mode. They can't think. All they can do is feel. And so this is a technique that helps them get through the feels so that they can move forward. And also, you can reflect. But I'm going to give you very simple reflections and very simple way to use this. But there's a more complex reflections and a way to use these reflections to really push a conversation forward. And that's what we're doing in mediation all day. We need the people to keep moving forward. And we need it to happen fast. So what do you reflect? You can, one of the simplest things to reflect is what a person just said to you. One of the things we do in mediation is we use the words that our client is using. Because when you use those words, they feel that you understand what's happening with them. And so just a simple reflection using their words helps. There was a study done on tipping in restaurants, and they found that if you, when the waiter repeats back to the patron the order exactly as the patron has given it to them, their tips improve. You can just take one of them.
Sorry.
That's okay. Their tips improve. So the other thing to reflect back is their emotion. You can state their emotion or what they seem to be feeling. You're not hearing their words, you are understanding the emotions that they are conveying to you. The other thing to reflect is identity issues. You're a hard worker. You feel you're the reasonable parent. You're innocent. These are all their identity issues, who this person thinks they are and who they want you to believe they are. You can reflect the meaning of what was said, or you can state their expectation or disappointment. This is a big one for mediators because the whole argument is about expectations. This other person is not living up to their expectations, and that's why they're in conflict. They're disappointed by this other person. So for mediators, if you can get to what that expectation was and what the disappointment is, you can often get right to the heart of the matter, and it can put you into this full conversation that will help create a better understanding so that they can move forward. You can state their values. You're a hard worker. So you feel the kids need limits, and they need to learn the value of hard work and discipline. What are they valuing about their family life? And then you can just simply finish a sentence for them. Uh-oh. So I'm going to do, if you guys have your handouts, I think the number one thing on there, you can start reading that. It's a little role play. And I got some actors who are friends of mine to do these role plays, but it didn't turn out very well. They were totally overacting. So I'm going to, I'm going to have you read along, and I'm just going to speak this myself. So the object here is to think about, what is this person feeling? So this woman comes in, and these are all actually taken off of people that have come into mediations before. So I don't understand what is happening. I've had 3 different social workers. I can't get anyone to contact me. I have no idea what's happening with my case. You know, I want my babies back with me. I was supposed to start getting overnights 3 weeks ago. And father says no, he's not going to give me overnights until the social worker tells him it's okay. And we can't even get her on the phone. So what is this person going through? What's her feelings and emotions here?
Really upset.
Upset, frustrated, yes. Anything else?
Confusion.
Confusion, yes.
Feeling helpless.
Helpless, yes.
Disappointed.
Disappointed. Yeah, so all of the things you said, cheated, worried, overwhelmed. The thing about labeling emotions is we all kind of think of our emotions in very limited terms. We're sad, we're angry, we're happy, we're joyful, but we don't really define our emotions too much. So when you define an emotion for them and you give them emotion that they hadn't put a word to before, it helps them process it a little bit better, and it gives them a new thing to tell or a new story to tell. So that's why, and it calms people down. You're telling them that I understand what you're going through, and I know you feel helpless and hopeless. And for a person to hear that and to understand that you feel that and that you understand that about them is all they're really looking for. So another thing that you can reflect are the person's identity issues or their values. So an identity issue is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. What is this person telling you about themselves? What is the other person not getting about them? What is the judge not getting? What is their attorney not getting? What is the other attorney not getting? What is the other parent not getting about them? Right? The values, what values are important to them? Is honesty important to them? Is being a good parent important to them? And why is it important? So basically here what you're doing is you're trying to find out what is at the heart of their anxiety or what are their self-doubts. And again, you're just naming these things for them, and then they feel understood. And once it's named, they're not going to dwell on it forever. They're going to be able to move forward, and that's the whole point of this. So we have who they are. So this is a mediation that I did where the mother was resisting the pickups and drop-offs because the paternal grandparents were making the pickups and drop-offs, and it was really causing a lot of problems for her. And she wasn't going to agree to it. She would only agree if Dad showed up. But there's a problem because their schedules didn't match up. So what is this person telling you who they are? This is your number 2. When the paternal grandparents pick up Johnny and Sarah, the first thing they do is ask the kids right in front of me if they are okay or if I hurt them. I'm not here for abusing my children. I'm taking care of my kids on my own with no help from them or father. I have a full-time job and I worked hard to support all of us and give us a good life. The father, he was nowhere around before this case came about, and I did and do everything myself. This father, he can't even do pickups and drop-offs on his own. They do everything for him, and they're worried about me hurting my kids? No way. He needs to do the pickups and drop-offs. I'm not doing it with the paternal grandparents. So what is this person telling you about herself?
Feels unappreciated.
Unappreciated, yep.
She's responsible?
She's responsible. She's a responsible parent. What else is she telling you?
She's tired of dealing with it.
She's tired of dealing with it, yes. What else?
She feels shorted by the father and the mother.
She feels what?
Shorted, like
Yes.
he didn't do his part.
So you could say something to her like, I understand you feel completely insulted and disrespected. These people are checking out your kids right in front of you, right? You're a good mother. She's saying, I'm a good mother. She's a hard worker and she's proud of herself. You feel like you're the responsible parent and you don't deserve this. It's like you've done all the right things and you're still being judged. It's unfair. you want them to recognize how much devotion you have to your kids. So you can kind of repeat back to them, what is it that they need to hear? What is it that they wish that they could hear from the other parent? What she wants to hear is that she's devoted to her kids and that she's a good parent. And she's a little bitter, right? So here's another one on expectation. So this woman says, my girls want to come home. I want them to get better grades. Before, when they were living with me, we had a whole routine worked out. I made it fun. We had a routine for homework. We had a routine for bedtime. Dad, he doesn't do anything. He's the Disney parent. They want to live with me, and they're getting bad grades now, and Dad doesn't even get them to school on time. So what is her expectation here? What was she expecting to have happen?
I wanted her kids to come back.
Yeah, she was expecting her kids to come back to her home, right? She thought she was going to be the primary parent or the sole parent, right? So you can say something to her like, it sounds like you miss your normal everyday routine. She's talking about the routine that she had, and she's kind of hopeful that they're going to get that back. You were hoping to get back to normal. School is important to you. You were expecting to pick up where you left off. Life has really changed for you this past year. Acknowledge everybody's going through a lot of changes. Acknowledge those changes for them. None of this really went the way you expected it to. The simplest thing, you weren't expecting this to happen. People are always like, right. When you give these reflections, what happens in the mediation room is people actually have a physical reaction to your understanding. Yes, yes, that's what we get all the time. That's right, that's what I'm feeling, that's what's happening. Yes, I don't deserve this. And so they get excited about it because you're understanding where they're coming from. And then you could even go further into this and ask an open-ended question to get her used to the idea that her life has changed and it's not going back. So what can you imagine what your new normal is going to be? That opens us up to a series of open-ended questions to get her thinking about what is going to happen next and how is she going to move forward with her children from here, right? And then it helps her as a mediator, it helps us to have people tap into that because it's a more positive mindset. And it's not based on the past, it's based on what's going to happen in the future. So this is another one that is a who I am kind of thing. We have this guy that came in, and this is how it works in mediation, is he came in and we had some new mediators. And the first thing he told everybody is that he'd been stabbed 6 times by the other parent. And the mediators were very empathetic and very understanding, and they listened to everything he said, but they never ever once repeated back to him anything. And so 3 hours later, he's mad, he's still talking about how he's been stabbed, and he's running up to his attorney because no one understands him and no one's listening to him. And so I run up after him, and this is what he tells me. You know, she stabbed me 6 times. I keep trying to tell everybody this. I didn't even go to the police. I went to my church and I couldn't call the police on her. And I want to help her out and I want to give her more parenting time. But she makes it so hard with this mental illness. She twists everything. She makes me the bad guy. She creates so many problems for me. You know, I have another child. I get along with my ex-wife. We co-parent together peacefully. There is never a problem with her. So what is he telling you about himself?
He's the good guy.
He's willing to work with her?
He's willing to work with her, which we want to tap into that as mediators. You're willing to work with her? Great. How can we make that happen? But we're not going to get to that until we tell him what he just said. What else is he telling you about himself?
He's a good co-parent.
He's the what?
A good co-parent.
He's a co-parent. He's a reasonable person, right? So something that we might say, what I said to him was, I understand that you feel entirely frustrated and wronged. You have another mother who you get along with, and you want to do the right thing, but Cheryl makes it hard. You're the good guy. You think your mental illness is making it impossible, and this is negatively affecting your life. This guy, I thought he was going to cry. He's like, yes, yes, yes. And I got him to come downstairs with me and finish the mediation, just by letting him know that I heard what he said. It's pretty amazing because the mediators that are new are always like, how did you go from this to this? And we're like, I don't know. We just rely on these techniques, and it works. So when do you reflect? So basically, we reflect throughout our whole day. But one of the some of the opportunities to reflect are when you notice a person is repeating themselves. If a person is repeating themselves over and over again, just reflect what they're saying. It'll land, what their complaint is will land on something. When they won't get off a subject, when a person is in a high emotional state, when they're complaining or blaming, and when just working with high conflict people in general, it's helpful to reflect. And every time we ask an open-ended question, we reflect like 2 to 3 times during their answer so that they can feel like they've been heard. So one part of the reflection is a summary. Do we have the time?
12:37.
Okay. So a summary is a bunch of reflections in one, kind of. You're kind of taking a lot of what the person has said and you're summarizing it for them. So it's just a big reflection of what was talked about. And this is helpful because it can help you move forward from a lot of emotion that has just happened or from a tirade that just happened. You can use a summary to refocus. So you say, you said this and this and this, and the question was this. And so how can we answer this question? How can we get back to this information that we need to know? To buy time, for mediators, sometimes you just reflect because you're sitting there going, I have no idea what to say right now or do right now. So let's just kind of look at the whole thing and see what has gone on so far, and maybe something will trigger them or us in a way to move forward. I'm going to show you a summary to create ambivalence. So all of our clients are kind of in the land of ambivalence. They're not sure what they want to do, and so I'll show you that a little bit later. You can summarize to give a whole picture quality, and then you can use a summary to just transition to a new topic. These are the things that you've talked about. These are the things that are going on. Now, what are our next steps? What are we going to do next? I have one last role play, and this person says, I'm a communicator. I need to communicate. How can I co-parent with him? He needs balls. He only does what his wife tells him to do, and I want it on the phone. No text messaging. She's texting me and pretending to be him. I don't know if it's him or not, and he could see me all he wanted if he would just communicate with me. I want to know what is happening with my daughter when she is with him. Did she get in trouble at school today? Is she not feeling well? I need to know. So basically, one of the things that we do in a summary is you can summarize and you can pick out the one thing in this tirade that can move it forward. So what's going to move this mediation forward? What is something that you can grab onto and run with? Yes?
I want to know what's happening with my daughter.
I want to know what's happening with my daughter?
That's her goal.
Yes. So there's an agreement point that can happen there, right? We can figure out a communication. What else?
That she's open to communicating, since she opened it up with, I'm a communicator.
Yeah.
So if she's open to communicating, then it's just about how to facilitate that going forward.
Yeah. So what she just told you is he could see Nina all he wanted if he would just communicate with me. That's what we grab onto. He can see her all he wants if he just communicates with her. So that means that if you can get to that, then we can open up the mediation and start discussing when is he going to see her. So we might do something like this. So I'm going to stop you for a minute. I understand what you're saying. Communication is important to you. You worry about what's happening with Nina's welfare while she's not in your care. And you really want to co-parent, and you feel like you wouldn't mind Jose seeing Nina all he wanted if you could just work together better. You would feel better about having a more joint or equal schedule if. So now in your summary, the thing that you put at the end of your summary is the thing that is going to move you forward. You're going to put at the end of your summary the thing that you're going to talk about next, right? So what you're going to talk about next is you wouldn't mind Jose seeing Nina all he wanted. Now we can talk about the schedule. And we can talk about an agreement point for communication and how they might communicate better so that she can chill out and come to an agreement about Dad seeing the child more. So so that's all reflection and stuff like that. And I have a couple more complex reflections in a minute. But just to give you this little ditty, check a person's understanding. It's kind of a fine line to walk here because you don't want the person to feel like you're being condescending. But it really does help for you to ask them if they can repeat back to you their understanding of what you just said. Now you know exactly where they're coming from and you know what they're understanding and you can clear up any misunderstandings from there. You can ask them to repeat back to you what are the next steps that are going to happen and what are they going to have to do next, right? So that's a really helpful one. So we get to a double-sided reflection. And a double-sided reflection is where you tap into a person's ambivalence, okay? You feel this and you feel this. And we don't say but, we say and. So this acknowledges, in motivational interviewing we call it sustain talk, when they're sustaining, they want to sustain the status quo, and change talk, when they're ready to start exploring how to do it differently or a different mindset. So first you would mention the sustain talk, and then you end with the change talk. So a way to handle this that we do it in mediation is maybe a person has been talking about how they really want mom to be in the child's life, and they understand how important it is that the children get to see mother. But now we're at this agreement point where we're talking Sunday and mom's insisting 4 o'clock is the return time, and maybe mom is saying, dad is saying 4 o'clock return time, and mother is saying, I want it to be 8 o'clock. And you're trying to find a way to close the gap. So one of the things that we might say to people is say, you know, this is a hard choice you have to make. You were hoping the kids would come home early on Sunday to get ready for school the next day. And you also mentioned earlier how the children miss being with their mother, and that at their age it's important for them to spend more time with their mother. So the change talk is at the end, and then we can start talking about how can they spend more time with their mother, and what's more important here, the school or spending more time with mother, right? And it kind of makes people kind of take a step back and think, oh, I did say that, but now I'm thinking this, and now it makes them consider the choice a little bit deeper, more deeply, and more fully. And to decide what is really important. How can they get ready for school? How can dad maybe get them ready for school so that the time is cut down with mom? And so it kind of puts them in a different place. So another way to reflect is by overshooting or undershooting your reflection. So if you undershoot a reflection, if a person's like so angry, I'm furious, I'm so angry, you say, well, you're a little irritated. And if you use the little irritated, that makes them keep talking. If you want them to keep talking and you want to keep exploring that a little better, you downplay it. But if you want to kind of get them to kind of stop a little bit and to put themselves into a place where they're going to be forced into change talk, you overshoot it. So instead of they're saying they're annoyed and they're irritated with dad, and you can say you're outraged and you're furious, this man is evil. And then they start saying, well, I mean, not evil, right? He does some good things. Oh, what are those good things? And so now you're talking about the positive aspect of it, and they've just put themselves there just by defending the other person or the other idea, right? And in motivational interviewing, you can really kind of use these techniques for evil in a way, but in motivational interviewing, there's this whole idea of the spirit of motivational interviewing and the spirit in which you approach a person, which is what changes these from kind of manipulative tactics to a more cooperative situation. Salespeople could use these, right? So, how much time do we have?
Half an hour.
Okay. So in motivational interviewing, we have something called the writing reflex, and it's a very natural reflex in all of us that when a person is coming to you, maybe your loved one comes to you, they've had a bad day at work and they're telling you for the 10th time about this coworker, and now you want to jump in and help them figure it out. And you're going to tell them, well, you should do this, or maybe you should do this, and the person gets really defensive because really they're not coming to you for solutions. They're coming to you to vent. They want you just to hear them. And so by offering solutions, they start getting defensive. And so that's kind of what the idea of the writing reflex is. We're not trying to tell these people what to do and fix their problems for them. We're trying to help them figure out how to fix the problems themselves. So so part of this is so part of the writing reflex is you're going to assess this problem for them, you're going to determine what they're doing wrong, and you're going to educate them on how to fix it. This will talk a person out of change. If you start telling them all the reasons why they should do something, why they should stop drugs, why they should start their classes, why they should do all of this, it's natural instinct for them just to say to themselves, to start saying, whoa, 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 no, I can't do it. I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that. I won't do it because of this. So that is kind of like a natural reaction that people have. So it's not your place to fix this person's attitude, beliefs, or behavior. And people don't respond well to being told what to do, why, and how they should do it. In mediation, we tell people, don't make your client wrong. So one of the ways to do this is to have a conversation about drugs or classes or something like that, is you can ask them first, talk about the things that make them want to do it. Talk about the reasons why they're doing it before you go to fixing and changing and giving them the reasons why they shouldn't. So some of the questions you can ask a person, well, what does drinking do for you? How does marijuana help you? You seem to really enjoy smoking marijuana. What does it do for you? How does it help you in your daily life? Why don't you like taking your medicine? So, so then you can go to, given what's happened so far, what do you expect might happen if you don't make the change? So it just kind of starts putting you in a place where you can let them not be ashamed about their habit or their addiction or the issue that they're having, but put them more into a place where they can kind of almost defend it first. And then you start talking about how can they change it. So a way to start some of this change talk is, how might coming to an agreement with your co-parent be useful or helpful? How might just going and taking your classes be helpful to you while you're going through this system? Or imagine for a minute if you did succeed in kicking your drug habit. What might be some good things that can come from that? You're not telling them the good things that can come from that. You're asking them to imagine and think about it and tell you what might happen. If you decide to make this change, what do you hope would be different in the future? And then we have a thing, it's a scale. And this is one way of also evoking change talk, is you have a scale of 1 to 10, and you ask them, how confident are you that you can kick drugs? And the person might say, well, you know, I feel like a 5. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident, I feel about a 5. And so you ask them, Why not a 2 or a 3? That immediately starts them again talking about why it is that they are at a 5, why they've decided to make the change. You can then go back later and say, what can you do to get to a 6? What can you do to get to a 7? How can you find more confidence? But first, again, you're talking about what is already the status quo before you talk about where to go next. So when you're giving advice, which I'm sure that's part of what your job is telling people what's going to happen and what they need to do in order to change their situation. So basically, it's generally unhelpful to give people information that they already have. And one of the things that we have a lot that happen in mediations, people ask me, what should I do? What do you think I should do? And so I say, well, what advice would you have for yourself? Think about that for a minute. What advice can you give yourself? Or what advice have you already gotten from people? And what have you already tried? It's not helpful to give them advice on something that they've already done. Well, I've already done drug rehab. I've already done this, you know. So you're asking a client's permission to provide information. And when you do that, it increases their willingness to hear what you have to say. So even though your job is to give them information, if you just simply ask them, can I give you a little information on what I already know? Or can I give you some information on what people have, other clients have tried? And then that gets them wanting to hear the information because you're asking them if you can give it. So basically they call it elicit, provide, illicit. Ask permission, may I tell you? Would you like to know about? Or can I tell you what other people have done in this situation? And present it without interpreting the meaning for the client. You're just giving them information. And then after you've given them that information, you're asking them, what do you think about that? Is any of this something that can work for you? That kind of thing. And then you have a whole conversation again about how to move forward and how to change instead of what's happening in the past. So decisional balance is, you have a worksheet there. And unfortunately, I couldn't get this onto my PowerPoint thing. But we use decisional balance a lot, mostly for our post-adoption mediations because people are having to make decisions about terminating their parental rights. And it's very difficult. And there's a lot of legal reasons why a person would want to terminate their parental rights. And then there's a lot of emotional reasons to not. And there's a lot of good reasons, usually in the course of a mediation, depending on what kind of visitation that parent is going to get with the child, that there's some good reasons to come to a decision. So I'm not sure how you guys might use this, and you can take a look at it and figure out how you might. But in our post-adoption mediations, what we do is it's about, are you going to sign the contract or not sign the contract? What are the pros of signing this contract? What are the cons of signing this contract? If you don't sign, what are the pros of not signing and what are the cons of not signing? And so this gives them a whole 360 view of where they're at. And because you guys have a lot of legal reasons why a person is going to want to make a certain decision, you are going to go through it with them. And one of the hardest things to do in practice for this is to really try to get the client to give you these reasons, like really forcing them to talk about it. And what we do in mediation is we put it on the board and we start asking them. And sometimes the client just wants to sit back and be a participant and kind of do a summary of all of the pros and cons. And so we'll do that too, but it's more helpful if the client can kind of be the one to express this. So in post-adoption mediations, for example, we'll say, well, what are the pros of signing a contract and terminating your parental rights, right? So we can say one of the pros is that court ends and you're saving money Another pro might be that you have control over the narrative of who you are. You get to meet your child now, and they get to see who you are instead of somebody telling them who you are. And we have a lot of pros. But what really ends up happening, especially for post-adoption, is the pros of not signing the contract are very few, usually. And the cons of signing the contract are usually something like, it's an emotional decision. And so they can really see it for themselves while they're standing there. And we use the board a lot in mediation. And I don't know if you guys use boards or big pads of paper, but sometimes this is something that you can even do on a big pad of paper when a client has a decision that they really need to make. And there's a lot going on surrounding that decision, just to help them kind of figure it all out and see it for themselves is helpful for them, so that it's just out there and it's not just jumbling around in their head and confusing them, right? So, engaging. How do you guys engage with your clients? You guys ever talk about that? Like, how are you garnering trust with your clients?
I think it depends person to person.
I'm sorry?
It depends on the person. Like,
Yeah.
I approach a DV perp completely different than I would a victim of passive.
Okay. So this is where I'll tell you what we do in mediation, and you guys can see how this might work for you in your situation. So one of the things that we do in mediation is the first conversation in our mediation that we have with a parent is very important, because what we need to do is we need to, they usually come in a very negative, with a very negative viewpoint of things, and we need to kind of anchor them in a more positive mindset. And we also need to anchor them towards, to move forward, because from 2 days a month to the 15 days a month. And so I tell our mediators, if the client is coming out of the mediation, calling their support person or talking to their support person and saying, I went in there, I told them how it was, and now Dad's in there and he better agree with what I say, that's not the conversation we want them to have. Because all of that time sitting in the waiting room is going to be them going over the same script that they got up talking about in the morning. So what we're trying to do is give them a new script, so that when all that time that they're waiting out there in the waiting room, they've got something else going around in their head and they've got to think of another thing. So what I want them to do is call the person and say, look, bad news, mediator's telling me it's joint, 2 days a month isn't going to be enough. They're not even going to accept the Friday, so I don't know what to do here. Help me figure this out. Now they're in problem solving mode. So I'm not sure how that might help for you. I'm not sure where your contacts are with your clients. But if you can just plant a seed in their head in the morning, if you just have a minute with them, plant the seed in their head, and then go back into the courtroom, go about your business, and by the time they're coming back into the room, they've already started thinking through their new reality. The thing that they didn't know was going to happen when they walked in the morning. So one of the ways that we engage our clients, in mediation it's all about emotions, and I'm sure that's a lot of what you guys are dealing with, are like very strong emotions. So for us, we need them to get their emotions out and on the table right away, because they're not going to make decisions and they're not going to be able to move forward if they don't. So after, a lot of our new mediators will engage their clients by talking about the weather and about parking. And I'm like, that's not really going to get you anywhere. You want to engage them about real stuff. And you want to gain their trust really quickly. So one of the things that we do is, after we've gotten into the mediation room and everything's settled down, I just look at them and I say, how are you today? And I usually get like a fake mask response. The response that everybody, I'm good. You know, but then the minute I look at them and I say, how are you feeling about being here today? That's where the emotion comes. People start crying. People start, they just have, again, a physical reaction of, oh my God, I'm so nervous. This is so anxiety producing. I'm so upset. I'm so pissed. Dad just did this. This just happened. So we're getting their emotions out there right away. Because if we don't, what happens is at the end of the mediation, the emotion comes up and now they won't sign anything. So we want to see, where are they? It's also a foundation for our mediation, because throughout the day, we can ask them later, well, how are you feeling now? I'm feeling great. Everything's better now. So then that they can kind of see where they've made progress throughout the day. It's not the same as when they came in. And it just anchors them in a whole different mindset. So that is a really big one that the mediators do, and it works. So how much time?
15.
Gosh. Okay. So one of the things that we do is we affirm people. And this is part of the reflection. And one of the best things to affirm people on in mediation are people's classes. If they finish their classes, that's a really big accomplishment for a person to have finished their classes. So we will talk to them about those classes. And one of the things that we do is we anchor them in a problem-solving mindset by saying, well, what did you learn in the class? Did you learn anything in this class that is helping you in this situation? Did you learn anything, any skills that help you with your co-parent? And then you get them talking about the things that they've learned in class, so because this is all new for them. These aren't skills that they've learned in their class that they're taking with them everywhere they go. They have to be reminded. Whenever we learn something new, we have to remind ourselves. So now we're anchoring them in this positive mindset. We're trying to tap into some of their problem-solving skills that they can use throughout the day. We can, so all of this engaging puts people at ease. It builds rapport and trust. And through the engaging process, just by a simply engaging people, we gain a lot of information. We find out what classes they're taking. We find out where they're working, what they do. Is their work schedule flexible? We found out all kinds of things about people. Why they're angry, why what they're doing isn't working. When you affirm people, what you're basically affirming is their best efforts and their strengths and their experience. This has been very difficult for you. Is there more questions about sobriety? And that is it. So these are some of the techniques that we use in mediation. And hopefully, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody? Yes.
So, one of the reasons why we send our clients to mediation, one of the reasons why we send our clients to mediation is because we, as the defense attorneys, don't have time to do exactly what you just explained that we need to do. So, and we're in a different role than mediators.
Exactly.
So we do have professional ethical responsibility at each proceeding to make sure our clients do understand what's happening in court, basically what the law is and how it impacts them.
Right.
And we're all doing it in very limited amount of time.
Yes.
So, based on that, what would you give to us as the top 5 things that we should be doing in the very limited time we have with our clients who are having these horrible experiences, and we need to hear them, understand them, reflect back, advise them, and sometimes honestly tell them what may happen based on what's going on, which is a little not like the mediation role.
Right. So the reflecting of the emotion, I think, is a big one. There's just the reflection and getting them to understand that you know where they're coming from. How much time do you have with them, with a client?
Depending on the day, the amount of cases. I mean, sometimes, seriously, what? Guys?
Hi, how are you? 20 minutes.
Maybe 20 minutes would be a great day. 20 minutes would be great. You're concerned about 5 hours.
Right, and you guys are trying to get it done in 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, with someone who, how do you establish trust?
Well, I mean, again, I think that it's the way, is putting those emotions out there first, because they're not going to hear you if they're being emotional. So try to see if there's a way to get that out on the table and having a conversation about it. You said something else that, the last thing you said about what you guys have to accomplish.
We have to, like, you're showing us how kind of not, you're suggesting that, we don't take the role of telling them, but engaging them in solution building and all of that. One, we don't have time, and two, that is not our ethical or professional responsibility as lawyers. We do have to advise them as to what an allegation is, what the evidence is, and what the consequence is, should they go to trial, should they not go to trial. So it's very much advise and consent, not feel out stuff, which is when we get to those. I mean, we used to mediate our allegations. We used to be able to do that because the attorneys could not do it. Now we mediate very small amount of stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I've seen some attorneys that have come into our mediation room to do what we call client control and have conversations with clients, and I've seen attorneys do this very expertly. You sometimes you just have to think about what they're going through and give them that first, verbalize that first, and say, I understand this is difficult. I understand you were not hoping that you were expecting to leave here today and you were going to have overnights with your children. I know you were expecting that. But this is where we're at right now. People will hear, and I don't know if the person's in the room right now that was doing this, but this attorney did it so expertly. She really empathized with this lady, and it took like 10 minutes. She empathized so much, but then she said, but this is where you're at. This is what's going to happen when you go to court. This is what the judge is going to do. These are the things that you have working against you. People will hear it if you give them where they are first and reflect to them where they are first and then give them the bad news. In our mediations, we have to give people reality checks all the time. We have to explain to them that what you thought was going to happen isn't happening. And it may not happen ever. And so we have to have those conversations with people. And in mediation, we have a co-mediation model, so we have a good cop and a bad cop. And we'll do silly things like a person will say, well, I think I'll give Dad 2 days, a month. And we'll be like, okay, just that little thing makes them go, okay. And then later on, you're like, so wait a second, I'm confused. I thought we had a joint schedule. And they're like, well, yeah. And it's like, but we're not anywhere near joint. How can we get this closer? So really, it's about making sure, I would just suggest that you always acknowledge where the person is, what the person is feeling, and where the person is in that moment first. And then get to the information that you need to give them. You might want to try, can I give you, I know you have to give them this information, and you're going to give them the information anyway, but just, do you think it might be helpful for you to say, do you mind if I give you this information now that you need to know? And get them to give you a verbal response, to buy into it before you give it. Yes?
I think it would be more effective if you gave them a roadmap and let them know, now, I've got to give you this information because we have to.
Yes.
And we need to fill out these forms. And the reflecting can take place in a couple of seconds. That one about the mom who did everything, or the grandparents were checking her kids. You could just say, yeah, that's rude, but they're probably afraid that the social worker is going to get on them if the kids get back with any injuries, and yeah, that sucks that you took care of these kids for all these years and the father didn't do that much. And that takes like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you can just go.
And
that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
You just empathize for like a minute.
Yes.
And then you just keep going.
Yes.
And you do a roadmap and you say, at the end you're going to get to ask me any questions or tell me anything else you need to tell me.
Yes.
We use these tools. We just can't do it as formulaic as you do it because we don't have time.
Right. Exactly. I would love to be able to, I don't even know what the ethics of this is, to be able to follow some of you and watch what you're doing, and I could probably give you more specifics to your situation. I can only tell you a little bit about what we do in mediation, and then the reflection stuff are just good communication skills. Try it with your kids. Believe me, it works. Anything else? Yes.
So, I thought what you said about overshooting was really interesting, but I was wondering if that ever backfires and gets them further riled up. Yeah, he's evil, you said it! He is Hitler incarnate! And how you would manage that.
Yes, whatever we do in mediation can always backfire, you know, and sometimes it's just walking it back, you know, it's just like, no. And I totally understand, but if you overshoot it enough, and you've already heard them a few times kind of express it in the minor way that it is, then you know that you can feel pretty comfortable that you're overshooting it enough to kind of push them in that direction. Yes.
Similarly, what do you do when you reflect to a client and then that just upsets them more? Like, I understand that you're feeling, or it seems like you're feeling angry and frustrated with this process, and that just makes them scream at you louder.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the reflection will make people cry, but again, they're already ready to cry. You want them to cry. We want people to cry in mediation because it releases tension, and then they can go forward. It releases their emotion. That's why we start with how are you feeling? Because if we can get that out on the table right away, then they're able to keep going. So there's always the danger, and there's also a danger that sometimes people will do, is that you start reflecting all the things that are wrong and never get to the things that are right, and now they're in this whole cycle of telling you the whole story all over again. But that's where you can stop people and summarize and say, you said that Dad does this, Dad does that, what's working? Or how can you handle the situation? A lot of people, what is going through their mind is they're in a situation where they don't have any tools to handle it. And just giving people tools or even an agreement point for handling the situation can chill them out. And then they are able to I just keep saying move forward, because that's what this is all about. It's about moving forward. And so you give people, you know, what it is that you flip back to people what's going on with them, and then eventually you're bringing the conversation, and there's more complex reflections where you're picking out things that people are saying and that you know are going to open us in a whole different direction, and that's like a whole other thing that I don't have time for today, but it gets more complicated than this. And for mediation, we're asking a lot of open-ended questions. We want to know why people have their position. We want to know what's going on so that we can help them troubleshoot and problem solve. Anything else? Well, I hope this was helpful. I know that you guys have such a hard job to do. Yeah, there's such a short amount of time to talk to clients, and that's the challenge. Thank you.